Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Hyde. I'll be your presiding member today and declare the meeting open at exactly 9:30 a.m. I acknowledge, first of all, that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and we acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of WA, Western Australia, and pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, users, and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with the MIDAP Standing Orders 2020-24 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of those regulations. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. So joining me today on the panel, I have to my left, Mr. Eugene Coltas, who is Deputy Presiding Member, and further to my left, Dale Page, Specialist Member, and in the room with me, welcome panel member, Councillor Peter Melrosa Councillor Daniel Minson, Local Government Member from the town of Victoria Park, and online, welcome Councillor Peter Melrosa, Local Government Member for the town of Victoria Park. Thank you for joining us. Item 2, apologies, we have none. Item 3, we have no members on leave of absence. Item 4, minutes of previous meetings are available on the DAP website. We move to part B of our agenda for the town of Victoria Park. And in the first instance, please could I ask panel members to declare that they've duly considered all documentation which is within the agenda and part B of the related information, noting that we did have additional R13 responses published on the 10th and 11th of December. Could I see a show of hands, please? Thank you. Due consideration has been given by all. Disclosures of interest. I haven't received any, but just ask the elected members on the panel, was this matter considered at a council meeting at all?
It was, I think, in 2019, so neither of us were actually councillors at the time.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Councillor Melrosa, for clarification. So no need to read any declarations of interest in that respect. So just noting, we don't have any Form 1 applications. We do have this Form 2 application at item 41A for number 51 Seabiscuit Drive, Burswood, which is an amendment to a development approval for mixed use. In accordance with DAP Standing Orders, Clause 482, presentations are limited to 3 minutes. We have 2 presenters today who I think will share that time. There's been no extension, so we'll let you know when you get close to your 6 minutes. Please focus on the main aspects that you wish to verbally present. We have received your written presentations and slide material prior. And then I'll ask panel members to raise any questions with the presenters, and then after that we'll refer to our officers from the town of Victoria Park who've joined us online. So we have presenting Mr. Mark Jevons from Hassel and Mr. David Reid from Element Advisory. So over to you.
Thanks, Mrs. Madam Presiding Member. We have lodged our deputations request. There's a PowerPoint presentation in there. We actually think it'd be more beneficial to the panel if we took questions but actually went through the R13 request, which came in after our deputation request. So we're happy to run through those at the panel's discretion, and then if there's questions we can refer back to the PowerPoint rather than, I'm sure the panel's seen it anyway. So. Okay, so am I right in understanding that you just want to talk about the R13 requests in your time frame? If you've got additional questions, then we're happy to do it that way.
Well, we'll let you say what you want to say, and then we'll come back to you for questions either around what you've said regarding the R13 or about your PowerPoint presentation.
Thanks, Madam.
Thank you.
Yep. So there was 2 deputation requests. So the first one that we received was dealing with condition number 27, the staging side of things. The only reason that we were looking at changing that condition was because the last condition on the original approval referred back to an attachment of the original approval. So we were just wanting to update that to be relevant to this application. The town's responded really well to that. We don't know at this stage whether it's going to be staged or not. We just wanted the ability to be able to stage it, given the 457 apartments. It's a large development. We haven't given it any further thought than that. It will be needing to address things like car parking, access, all those sorts of things, to making sure that each stage is adequately addressed. We're happy with the town's suggested change to that condition, so we're fine with that. The new condition that was also recommended in that R13 was regarding a condition regarding a cover letter and a copy of the final working drawings. Madam Chair, that condition is more than reasonable. I think we're going through the work through the town with another town now in precinct A, and there's 7 different building permits being applied, so that is, we'll do that anyway. That's a more than reasonable condition. The question on the small car bays, this question fills me with joy, because I had this question for the traffic engineers about a month ago, and I completely understand where you're coming from. And the way it was explained to me was it's more of a safety issue as cars are entering that car park with that volume of car parking bays, that if there was a small car bay, I think the theory was that cars would park more at the front of the bay rather than at the back of the bay, and then as cars reversed out, they would have more time to see cars turning in. That entrance as more of a safety aspect. I couldn't argue with Peter Damon. He's got way more experience than what I have. So we sort of just said, look, we end up with 3 small car bays at the front. That's fine. What we did discuss, and we did agree, that is, if they were reverse in bays, then that would be a safer option. They could be full length bays if they were reversed in, because then the drivers at the front, sight lines improve. So if the panel was willing to change that condition 38 for the 25 full width bays, we'd probably just recommend that with the 3 bays nearest the vehicle entrance also being marked reverse in only, and then that would satisfy both requirements. That was it for the first R13 request. The second R13 request raised issues or questions regarding the status of the planning framework. I think the town's answered those questions very well. We're happy with that. Those answers. We are working with the town and the WAPC mainly on the structure plan, which does expire in October next year. So we are looking at getting an extension to that overall structure plan, and there may be some minor modifications to that, but we're still waiting to get a response, work that through with the WAPC in the town. The LDP for Precinct D, I think, expires in 2027. We haven't started a process for the review of that LDP. There's just other priorities, given there's no LDP for Precinct B, and there's still so many other complications everywhere else that we just haven't progressed that Precinct D structure plan. So we are happy with the town's reply on that. I think the next issue was the 5-star Green Star and the sustainability side of things, and I might need to refer to my colleague here a little bit, but I will just point out that it's not a requirement of the LDP. The LDP was very clear and said we have to demonstrate achievement of the equivalent of a 4-star Green Star standard designed for multi-residential buildings. We're not seeking to go outside the LDP, and we believe that requirement is fine. We've on Precinct A and the whole development as a whole, we did go to the Green Building Council. It's the whole project is actually ineligible to qualify for a certified outcome because there's some changes to wetlands and things like that, so that we can't actually get a certified outcome. We did on that other development go through and try and still target the 35 points, but in this instance we are definitely doing the 4-star Green Star. But there's been a new National Construction Code 22, which has come in since the original approval issued, which means we still need to address a whole lot of other sustainability access to sustainability matters, such as, I think, 7-star Green Star, 7-star Netters.
So basically the NCC 22 is a lot more onerous than the previous 2019 version, and 2022 NCC is a lot more onerous than Green Star 4-star as well. So it is a significant change that everyone is coming to grips with, architects, etc. So the performance requirements of whole of building efficiency, renewable energy, glazing a building envelope, etc., without having to change any of the Green Star requirements.
The other thing I will say is there is obviously a PV system that's on this, which complies with SPP 5.3 of the apartment code. And just as a final comment, the level of detail that's even required to demonstrate that you achieve the 4-star Green Star it's a lot of information. There's about 10 pages at 6-point font, which I can't actually read anymore, but there's a lot of detail, and I think the best thing here is to actually do the 4-star Green Star and do those requirements that Mark has mentioned. But the biggest thing is he's trying to get 457 apartments on the ground next to a train station, provides a far more sustainable benefit, I think, than trying to add additional costs over what we're doing anyway. So I'm hoping that answers that sustainability question. The parking on lot 6 regarding an advice note, we don't believe it has to be an advice note. It's covered by an LDP. The LDP states that residential visitor parking and any non-residential parking that's not required to be provided on the site and are to be collectively provided on lot 6. So it's a matter that we're going to have to give due regard to. In any event, we've actually provided 25 visitor bays on site, which is 25 more than what we had last time. And we hope that addresses that aspect as well. I'm happy to take questions.
One other suggested new condition 45, which was to do with suite of drawings, etc., which was in the first R13.
Was that the at the building permit stage one? Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm more than happy with that. That's
Prior to lodging an application.
That's more
standard.
That's the one I'm saying that we're doing for precinct day. We went through the town. We've got 7 building permits.
Yeah.
So we're definitely happy with that condition. That's more than reasonable.
Thank you for that presentation. I'll ask panel members if they have any questions of the presenters. I might start online. Panel member Councillor Peter, would you like to ask any questions of the presenters?
I would love to. I am particularly interested in the the addition of the port cochere and the DRP's comments in attachment 5, item 7, that relate to the ground floor and the introduction of the port cochere. Those comments, in summary, talk about the introduction of the port cochere being a backward step in urban design. It results in a disruption of the street edge and the removal of the grocer, which I guess enables that space, reduces the street life and texture of that ground floor, and part of the active frontage being replaced by services. Just in relation to the grocer aspect, what makes the grocer unviable?
The grocer side of things was actually the first building that was approved on lot 308 actually has the grocer in it. So that grocer is basically being moved around more into the residential component. Precinct B is going to have up to 60,000 square metres of retail in it. So precinct B is going to be the more focus for the retail component within the first stages of development. Being focused now in North Park, and that's actually got the, I'm going to say an IGA type product in it. So there was no longer a need to have that grocer over in this part of the development. But Mark, I'm happy for you to jump in and ask a question, because the whole design theory about the port cochere was hassles.
Yeah, so the addition of the port cochere was added for enhanced resident amenity, obviously with the increase in ride sharing, food delivery, etc. We wanted to make a space that allowed for that, with better traffic flow, better circulation, better safety for residents and visitors, with vehicle entries being more easily legible to get around that area, dropping people off in a safer area rather than having to go outside the space with reversing traffic in the adjacent public parking zone. We thought there'd be less congestion as well with improved legibility. And also part of what the changes to the design was to try and articulate the facade with the tower form coming to ground, and that also enhances that space. So it's not just a dark space. We actually have a cutout in the facade, which provides better natural light there. But also, we thought it actually increases the active surveillance in that area. Previously, where it had a small retail unit and the market, after hours, that would likely be closed, dark spaces. What we've done is increase the size of the lobby. Previously, these were minor lobbies and the central lobby was large, and now the two towers have larger lobbies. And we've added a communal space in there as well. So there's actually going to be a lot more activation at night in that space, which improves safety as well. And in terms of the design review panel's comments about services, we actually have exactly the same amount of active frontage as previously. All that's happened is the services have moved around slightly, all while having the design team having to improve the escape and access for fire safety, which previously in 2019 was a little bit easier. The new codes are harder, so we've managed to be able to do that, maintain the same active facade while having to go through more onerous escape requirements as well. So that answers that.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Morosa? Did you have a further question?
I guess in terms of that response, and maybe the summary of that is already written into one of the justifications in that part, that said things like the design revision to include walk share, prioritize the resident experience, provide a valuable amenity for residents, suited the current urban lifestyles and the specific needs of the location. This location is in the transit-oriented development precinct of the structure plan area. So how does that port cochere relate to transit-oriented development?
Take them into I think the context for that was, and that's probably something that might not be evident or even on the plans, is the design for the public open space right opposite is actually as a car parking bay. I'm going to say about 20 car parking bays that come in off Seabiscuit Drive, and there's no ability like a turnaround through. It's basically just a straight line in, 20 car parking bays. So if you got to the end, to actually get in and out of them is going to be difficult. Without the port cochere, I think people are going to be in there and trying to do some sort of three-point turn or reverse back out. By actually having the port cochere, it improves that local access where the ride shares and the deliveries and all those sorts of things can happen in an organised flow. So I think it was more meant in a very localised context rather than the broader context, I think, that you were referring to.
Did you, in the process of the design of the port cochere, consider any other locations at that ground level part of the building?
Because of the limited access to the site, which is literally just that southwest corner, and the location of the towers, this was seen as the best location for it. Obviously, it's adjacent to the lobby as well. And the further, if you had a drop-off area further in, you'd have to dramatically take cars a lot further into the site, making it a lot safer, having to do turning circles and other logistical gymnastics, let's call it, to get that to work. And we felt that this was the most simplest, but also the most effective way of bringing those vehicles, getting them in and out as quickly as possible without taking them further into the development.
I guess I'm just that little bit concerned that port cochere is the first thing that you see at that truncation of Seabiscuit as it goes around the corner, and it being a bit car focused. I mean, I acknowledge that there is a bit of a shift in the way consumers are buying their goods and whatnot, but I do feel that does still have a little bit of a car focus. But I think, you know, the responses seem to be fairly reasonable, and I guess when you look at the frontage or elevation in general, it doesn't really provide too much of a problem visually. I guess it would be ideal for it to not be there and maybe tucked around the side or something like that. But look, I think I wouldn't die in a ditch over it. Well, thank you for those responses. If you had another comment to provide, then please do. I don't have any more questions there.
Just a quick one on that. The actual surfaces of this would be pedestrian focused, so it won't be a bitumenised road. It'll all be paved seamlessly, so it'll be a pedestrian focused area. So I won't read it as a road. Typical to a high class hotel drop off, let's call it.
Sure. I actually do have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
If for example, we were not very supportive of a porte cochere and it was removed, what would happen to the development?
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer. It would provide more congestion around that public open space parking in terms of deliveries and legibility for, obviously with 450 plus apartments, it does become a more of a logistics issue with the way things are going with drop off, etc. So it'd probably actually increase congestion around that public parking area. That's probably the only comment I could probably make on that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'll come back to you, Councillor Melrose, in a while if you've got some more questions, but I might see if some of the other panel members, panel member Councillor Minson, did you have any questions of the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on the, I guess, the first on the staging plan we were just discussing. So you were saying that at the moment there's kind of, no foreseeable staging, but what would be like a practical or likely staging option? Would it be like a build one tower, build the podium and a tower unbuilt?
Madam Chair, I think the first stage is likely to be build the basement and the entire podium and then one tower. I think that's the only possible, you've got more experience than what I have, but I would have thought that's the only possible solution. But there's so many complications involved in doing that. And then you've got residents in it when you're trying to build the tower next door. It's really hard. It's so much easier if you can build 457 apartments, but trying to get pre-sales and whatnot for 457 apartments can be difficult. So we just want the flexibility to be in there to be able to work with the town. If that situation arose, then it's the option to be able to do that.
But the intent is to build the whole thing unless market kind of impacts. Okay. And I guess further to the staging, obviously we're just talking about these lots, these two towers. Kind of briefly talked about, the commercial centre in Precinct B and the grocer in Precinct A. Do you have a comment, I guess, on the general staging for the whole of the Belmont Park development? I guess considering, these developments coming sequentially and with services and amenities to follow at different stages?
That's the question. Because the current development that we're working on is actually in Precinct A, the North Park side of things. So there's 76 dwellings in there, and it's obviously to get services furthest from the servicing point is obviously the issue that's being resolved. They basically go through the racecourse and on the side, which gets the first 76, and then we've got to build the boulevard around. I suspect with the boulevard coming through, the next set of towers that they're working on is actually 308, and then this would be the next set of towers. This is actually a different product. It's actually the Precinct A product is a larger, more expensive product. This has got greater diversity in it. So depending on demand and build costs and things like that, this might be the next one after the tower lot. Precinct D subdivision is, I'm going to say 99.5% complete. We're just waiting on the final clearances there. And if there's demand for an office building or demand for something else that comes in, then these guys will switch and start focusing on wherever that demand is to get that building away. But I suspect otherwise it's basically started North Park and then worked the way around to Precinct B, but it really does depend on market. The market just changes things.
Thank you. And I guess on the construction activity then for the development staging, so the current proposal to have, is it Saintly, is it the one coming between Precinct A to Precinct D through, I guess, the future work zone of Precinct B, would the construction activity in Precinct B kind of be accessed away from, I guess, residential?
So the first stage to get North Park complete, we actually need to build the boulevard, which is Racecourse Boulevard, which runs parallel to the racecourse all the way down to the roundabout at the Saintly entrance. And then Seabiscuit Drive is then connected up and goes up over the bridge. So I think that's open now anyway while they do the connection works around that. So the boulevard itself will be constructed so that access will be provided, and then they'll be building off either sides. We just need to work through the town as to how the extent. Obviously, when you've got build site next door and there's footpaths and landscape and things like that, there might be some stage landscaping which comes down on the periphery, but there might be landscaping down the middle and the carriageway there and a footpath connection and whatnot. So to try and get that linkage from, because we're going to, in about 3 years' time, there'll be residents actually in North Park. So we need to make sure that they're connected and have that standard of amenity and livability while we're also trying to roll out the rest of the precinct. So yeah, that's one of that. I think I said the 100 complications of this project.
Yeah.
That's a key one, yes.
Yeah, that's great. Some other questions. Just, I guess, comment on the dwelling mix. You're just mentioning that these towers and precinct D are, more diverse and I guess more in the luxury style in the north area. So do you have a comment on, I guess, the requirement in the detailed area plan for it? I think it's a 20% single bedroom requirement. I think is it 10% that we are supplying with this development. So I guess comment on what the reason we hit that 20% requirement for the one bedrooms.
I think it was just a product mix that was from market research is what was needed or required. So a developer but it's basically what they believe is required and what can sell.
Did a discussion on the structure plan revision. So I guess one of my concerns, I guess, is the current maximum dwelling target 4,500 for the structure plan area, and then I think it's 1,500 for the precinct D. Do you have a comment, I guess, on how we're tracking to be within those maximum dwelling targets at the moment?
In the context of this application?
Yeah, so I think the precinct D, it does say that development shall have regard to a notional cap of 1,500 dwellings across precinct D, and considering the number of dwellings within each lot. So I guess this application and ensure the future development of other lots or precincts is not prejudiced. So I guess in that context, yeah.
Trying to understand the question, I guess, in the context of that, I think like 457 dwellings, I think, is the right height and mix that we can get for this site. There hasn't been detailed plans that have been done on lots 4, 5, and 6 as yet. But they will come, but that principle in the structure plan to try and get density in that train station, get to 1,500 dwellings is probably more of a priority than making sure we don't exceed it. Like if you're going to exceed density somewhere, you really want to exceed it right next to the train station. So that dwelling number for the overall precinct is largely traffic driven. There's one freeway, there's 2 entrances in and out. So what happens in that entire precinct is very much traffic driven. I'm hoping that changes in the future, given the train stations there. But at the moment, especially the retail side of things, that roundabout is the pinch point, and it's just a matter of working out how we can get that roundabout working, which will sort of control the density moving forward. But precinct D does at least have the connection over Grand Farm Freeway. It's got sort of the 2 options without necessarily clogging up that roundabout back at St. Helens.
Yes, I guess considering with the current lot and the dwellings proposed in the current lot and I guess the current plans for the rest of precinct D, I guess, is there a projection out considering the other precincts as well that we are overshooting that 4,500 dwelling target for the structure plan area, or you're saying that?
Probably the biggest bit that's iffy is precinct B itself, and precinct B is something that we're just working through with the town. We come to the council. We've got a DRP meeting next week on precinct B, so that's the bit that's uncertain yet because we don't have an LDP in it, but the dwelling targets for the other areas are aiming for that 4,500.
Okay, yeah. So I guess the concern, I guess, would be that we are prejudicing precinct B if we have the 4,500 target and A and D add up to, quite a high number, that B the net has got to be quite low.
Yeah, further questions?
I do, thank you. The stormwater design, the management of that, there's a bit of talk about that throughout the approval. So my understanding is that, we had the original kind of stormwater design and subsequently we had the urban water management plan drafted. Has there been more work since then, or it's all kind of be coming at the detailed design stage?
Pretty much. I think, sorry,
There you go.
I think it needs to be clear that it's actually on page, I think it's 267 of the agenda, which is the UWP that was done. And that says retain or detain the first 15 mils. And that's also, again, on page 291, with the criteria for SW1 is retain or detain the first 15 mils. So the strategy is for it to be detained in that landscaping strip at the back. And that's landscape basically flow through one end, do the nutrient stripping, and then it actually flows out. I know there was a point raised in the WAPC RER, given the amount of PV cells that are now extended back, but those PV cells are actually elevated, so there's ground covers and things, so that quantum of volume in that area is still maintained exactly the same. So that's detailed in stormwater management strategy as to how that works. We'll go through, but we're sticking to the UWP requirements.
I guess the other big considerate the 1 in 100 flood level flooding down the Swan, I guess. That not looking like a concern, the level of, I guess, the residential level above that.
This is way beyond my level of expertise when it comes to 1 in 100 level, but my understanding is that whole subdivision's being designed. I think once it gets to that 1 in 100 year storm event, things just start flowing out into the river anyway. The city's probably, the engineers of the city have been well and truly onto us for precinct D and the whole stormwater design and things like that. So it's more of an overland flow path once it gets to that extreme event. But the whole stormwater system's being designed and catered for around this development. And yeah, the town's well and truly onto us with regard to drainage design.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions?
Just one last one. Thank you. Again, it might be a technical one that you might not be able to answer again, sorry, but the geotechnical conditions on the site, obviously there's been a lot of work over the whole site to get the grounds in a good condition. I guess, yeah, so for these lots, has there been that work already to kind of, I guess, consolidate the ground there? And is there kind of large geotech kind of issues that are still outstanding, or we're quite?
I'll answer my layman's level, but precinct D is actually far better than precinct A. Precinct A is more of the alluvial soils, which is very unstable and needs to pile, like even the roads and the sewer, everything is being piled in precinct A. Precinct D is a lot more stable, but they have done geotech reports for that whole precinct, but they haven't been done to support the weight of the 2 level of towers. That next level of detail will come, and then I'll have to engineer the design around that, whether that means more piles or deeper piles. That's something that we'll get to at that stage. But again, the town has been well and truly across the geotech in that area. Yes.
Might have made a mistake. I got one more. It was a 5 on the Green Star one. Sorry. So talking the 4-star Green Star and the proposal to make it 5 stars. You're saying that with the NCC, the 2022 standards, that you mostly hit the Green Star, the 5-star Green Star anyway by meeting those conditions. So I guess if we are doing that anyway, and we already have to do all the reporting you're talking about anyway for the 4-star, is it such a substantial, I guess, additional burden to have the condition for a 5-star?
Okay. I'm not a sustainability expert on it, but the 5-star Green Star adds additional requirements and let's call it box ticking exercise on various other areas. But in terms of actual performance of the building, energy savings for the occupants, things like that, NCC 2022 is still a higher level than the Green Star and 4-star Green Star and 5-star Green Star for energy as well. We've designed this with the NCC 2022 in mind. We've reduced the amount of glazing in the facades. We've changed a lot of things to do with the materials and performance. And once we get into the building, the actual detailed design, there's a lot more onerous requirements for air tightness of your building, of your facade, which obviously adds additional costs, etc. And in terms of sustainability, that's where your sustainability comes from. It's not the box ticking exercise of meeting other requirements of Green Star, which is lot of people are starting to move away from that and trying to get real building performance. There's discussion at the moment around the traps in Australia, particularly Perth and South Australia, about actually delaying NCC 2022 coming into effect for 10 years because of the cost of buildings, etc. We think it should be a requirement, but it is a significant requirement still to meet that, and with builders, even mechanical engineers around the place, still struggling to come to terms with that. And what that means, the quality of the building goes up because your facades, etc., have to be a lot more detailed. Trades, which can be an issue at times, are going to have trouble trying to learn how to do this. So there is a significant burden on that as well. We're not steering away from requiring to meet that. We think it should be done, but we think that this is where the performance and sustainability of buildings will come in, not the Green Star box ticking exercise, because this is where your carbon savings are taken from energy use. Yeah. If that answers the question.
All good.
Yeah, all
Thank
good.
you. Ms. Page, did you have questions?
Just as part of our 13 responses.
Lovely, thank you. Mr. Colthouse, did you have questions?
Only one. It's a general question. The station at Optus Stadium there, that's an event stadium. Is that going to be converted to? It's already open, is it?
Yep.
So every day you can stop there.
Very recent.
Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Going back to the urban water management raised by both RARs, and you have a number of existing conditions in the approval, and you've now got a new condition from the Planning Commission. You're understanding how to coordinate those approval processes given the two authorities. How do you envisage that will be coordinated?
Relationship that we've got with the town and WAPC on the most complicated projects in Perth has been fabulous. We're more than happy with those conditions to work through. The whole thing's complicated because we're also doing foreshore works in the regional open space, which all involve the WAPC as well as the town and DBCA. We have to work closely with all three agencies. I'm more than happy to work through them with those conditions. And so
All right. Thank you for that. If there are no further questions of the presenters at this point, we actually have with us in the room Mr. McDonald and Mr. Cruikshank from the town of Victoria Park. I might see if panel members have questions of the officers. Panel member Councillor Melrosa, do you have questions of the town's officers?
I do. In the RAR on page 13, the town states their agreement with the DRP sentiments relating to the pork share, yet do not consider the sentiments to provide sufficient grounds to refuse the amendment or impose any conditions. My question would be, in what instance would it be considered sufficient grounds to refuse the amendment or to impose conditions of approval to ensure that such a design matter is rectified?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. McDonald, Town of Victoria Park. Having regard to State Planning Policy 7.0, Design of the Built Environment, Markets Volume 2, and a suite of other planning documents, there's of course a raft of considerations to be considered and evaluated. If the Port Cochere was hypothetically the length of the building and it was proposing a drastic change to the built form, it became an entirely car-dominated environment, that of course would be a bad outcome. The town would be arguing stronger, perhaps recommending deferral or even refusal if it got to that extent. But the recommendation reflects that the town is comfortable. It's still a great development, still a good development, still meets the element objectives and the intent of the LDP. So as noted in the RAR, while we see it as a step backwards, it is still worthy of approval.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Melrosa? I think there you are. You're off mute now. Did you have any further questions?
No, I think I'm happy with that response. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Panel member Councillor Minson, did you have any questions of the officers?
Yeah. Just I guess also a comment on the dwelling mix, similar to the question to the applicants about that requirement for the 20% for the 1 bedroom. Do you have, I guess, comment on the outcomes from not meeting that requirement and only providing 10% mix?
We've done some very quick maths and confirmed that the number of 1 bedroom dwellings was previously approved at 12%. It decreases in this proposal down to 11.6%. So it is a decrease, but it's still very small. And we are still satisfied that the proposed dwelling mix provides a diversity of dwellings within the precinct.
The 20% is from the detailed area plan, the previous approval. I guess what you're saying is that from the initial DA that they were happy at that time to halve the requirement.
All right, thank you. Ms. Page, did you have any questions of the officers?
Already answered, thank you.
You, Mr. Coltons?
Just in terms of the extension of time, I know the Commission says from the date of approval. Yours says from a certain date. To align both, would you have objections to changing it from the date of approval?
No objection.
I think we've just provided an end date. We've basically given additional 2 years from the date of approval. We've stated.
They should be the same, but if the wording.
Yeah, so
You
the
said approved on
practical impact is the same, but yeah.
11th October 2028. Yeah, you mentioned.
Oh,
that.
sorry, that approval. Sorry.
Okay.
On the original approval, yes.
So it's the 12th, I believe.
I think from the original approval in
Yes.
2019. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Just referring to, I think it was condition 41 of the amended condition. Do you see that being a condition, or is that rather an advice note, an online application to build airports protected airspace assessment tool? It's actually in the RAR as condition 41. The applicant and responsible contractor shall lodge an online application to build protected airspace. I think that would be more appropriate as an advice note.
I would probably say that we've just reflected the request of Perth Airport. We've requested it to be a condition, but I think obviously looking at the intent of that wording, it's outlining a process that needs to be a separate approval that needs to be made. So I think in that respect, it probably would be more appropriate as an advice note.
Yes, thank you for that. Obviously, just following on from my previous question to the applicants, there were a number of conditions as part of the original approval that talked about stormwater management and dewatering and so on and so forth. And we now have a new condition referring to similar to stormwater management from the Commission. Are you comfortable that there's clarity in those conditions from an applicant's point of view? Have you painted a clear process that they're to go through? In previous approvals, there was condition 19 and 33, which talked around stormwater management and dewatering management, etc. They're still in place, obviously.
Yeah, I think obviously you asked from an applicant's perspective, or the applicant answered that they felt comfortable with that, and I just reinforced that the various subdivision approval, development approvals across the site, which have required the various stakeholders to be involved, that I'd be comfortable that we'll work through those and have those satisfied to each party's satisfaction.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. I don't think I had any further further questions. If there's no further questions of the officers, we might let them go. Obviously, we have this decision in two parts. So in the first instance, we will refer to a decision on the planning scheme. And we have the responsible authority report, which recommends that we do indeed approve this application. For the first instance, we accept it as a Form 2 and that we approve it subject to a number of amended conditions, amended advice notes and new conditions. So in the first instance, I'd like to see if there is a mover, please, for that as the substantive motion. Is there a mover, please? Mr. Coltas is happy to move. Is there a second? I'm happy to. Ms. Page is happy to second. Thank you. Very good. As mover, Mr. Coltas, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, look, this application is under the auspices of Town Planning Scheme number 1, on Park Racecourse Redevelopment Structure Plan, and on Park Precinct TD Transit Orientated Development Detailed Area Plan. The Responsible Authority report addresses the statutory basis, and I support that and I understand it. From the issues raised, there was the extension of time, visitor parking, proposed land uses, stormwater management, and the ground floor boulevard changes. Regarding the extension of time, there's a test for that. The planning framework is unchanged. The planning assessment supports the proposal, so therefore it would likely receive approval, and the applicant has demonstrated that they have pursued the implementation of the overall Belmont Park Precinct redevelopment by commencing various stages and undertaking a significant amount of work. So in that regard, I support the extension of time. The visitor parking there was a thorough assessment of that, and the proposal supported. There are some changes to some of the conditions in regard to parking, which we'll go on to later. The proposed land uses, the change in the commercial tenancies from 904 to 728 square metres was supported, and it had an impact on parking. These 2019 plans provided 12 commercial instead of 33. That went through an assessment process and was supported. In 2024, the application requiring 16, and there are 25 shared visitor parking bays. That's supported, and more shared bays are to be provided in the future. In regard to stormwater management, whilst there has been some concern expressed at the proposed system, the applicants and the council's technical staff are confident it will work and be subject to more detailed calculations prior to lodging building licence applications. And if required, the applicants have made an undertaking that they will be required to modify the design and necessary lodge amended plans under another Form 2. In regard to the ground floor boulevard, it's really there for drop-off and pick-up, and in the absence of that, the applicants have stated that and the council, of course, have supported it, the council staff, an area which is considered to be quite a bit unsafe, and this requirement to share is standard, I think, in most multi-storey developments around the place. It guides people where to drop off and pick up, and also provides a turning circle, as the applicant said, for vehicles in that area. There was concern by the design review panel that it will upset the rhythm of the frontage of the building, by deleting some nil setbacks. But I think that's been addressed by the fact that the safety issues are quite important. The amenity for the residents is important, and also it's only a relatively small proportion of the facade that's changed. In terms of the accessibility in regard to the livable housing design guidelines, I think that the cost of implementing those in this current approval is important, and I don't think it's necessary to impose conditions to change the local development plan that talks about 4-star Green Star. That being the case, I'm supporting it, and I think we'll get back to the changes. I've lost track of a couple of them, so
right.
we can go back to those later. I'm supporting them. So
Handle those. Thank you very much, Mr. Colthouse. Ms. Page, as seconder.
Thank you, presiding member. Look, I'm happy to support the recommendation for approval. I concur with the statements made by Mr. Colthouse. I'm not going to labour the points already well made. But I will just say that I think the amendments proposed don't significantly alter the overall impact of the development. It's been previously considered and approved by the DAP. And if anything, I think this Form 2 has given the opportunity to rethink a few things, like the new visitors bay, as well as the opportunity to sharpen a few conditions and advice notes. I did want to make a point about the Port Cochere. I note the panel feels that's a step back in the overall quality of design, not enough to warrant refusal. I don't believe I agree with the officer's report in that regard. My personal view is, in terms of the design change, I actually think this change adds some visual interest in that location and creates enhanced functionality and livability to the residents of the building. I think all too often we are designing buildings nowadays that don't think about the fact, even in TOD precincts, we don't think about the fact that Woolies is going to drop off the groceries and there's rideshare and there's Uber Eats and so on, and that actually causes an issue. So having a look at the plans and the renders, I don't think it actually detracts much from the development at all. I think it adds more than it detracts, so happy to support that change. And we can talk about the other changes in a bit.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak for or against? Councillor Melrosa, yes?
I'll speak for. I take into all of the points into consideration that the other panel members have said, particularly about the issue that I raised with the Port Cochere, acknowledging that it's not desirable. In my perspective, I think the rationale that has been provided does make a lot of sense, and we do need to consider these things going forward. I think overall the development is actually quite nice, and it's just yet another example of something really great that's happening out here on the peninsula. So yeah, on that basis, just some very light words. I'm very happy to support.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Melrosa. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Minson?
I guess amendments first. Did you want to do, I guess, bulk of those amendments that came through with the R13s?
Yes, would you like to propose some amending motions?
Would you like me to move those ones? Or?
Yes, that would be fine.
All right. So I think I've got them all. Yeah. If you can check things out.
All right.
Go through. So yeah, moving on to amendment for additional 45.
Yes.
Prior to launching an application for a building permit, letter and copy of the final working drawings, prepared for the submission for an application for a building permit, and all associated reports and information that address the conditions of approval are to be submitted to and cleared by the Town of Victoria Park.
Yes.
I think we'll just do all these together.
Yes, en bloc.
Condition 27 of the JDAP's approval dated on the 11th of October 2019 be amended to read as follows. Where the development is not to be constructed in its entirety, staging plan for the development must be submitted and approved to the satisfaction of the Town of Victoria Park to the submission of the first application for a building permit or at a later time agreed to by the town. The staging plan is to be thereafter be implemented in accordance with the approved plan or any subsequent amended plan to the satisfaction of the town.
Yes.
The deletion of advice note 26 and the amendment of new condition number 38. That needs a minimum of 25 full-sized car parking bays, not including the share bays, to be provided on site for a shared use by residential visitors, commercial visitors, and commercial staff to the satisfaction of the town. These bays shall be marked accordingly prior to the first occupation or commencement of the development.
Yes, I think it was 3 bays nearest the entrance being marked reversing vehicle only
Okay.
as well. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else you wish to add? Seconder?
I think, yeah, we'll move those ones in.
All right, I'm happy to second those. Councillor Minson, did you wish to speak to?
Just to provide a reason, I guess that these were kind of requested by the Town of Victoria Park to clarify the existing conditions.
Okay, lovely. I too am comfortable with all of those. Don't really need to speak to them. I think we've had plenty of questions which have explained the reasons and why for. So let's just vote on those amending elements as amending motion 1, which have been moved and seconded en bloc. Then I'll come back to you to talk to the overall. All those in favour of that amending motion? That's unanimous. Thank you. You still have the floor. Would you like to speak to the substantive?
I'd like to just move another amendment.
Yes.
So just a new advice note. I think it's advice note 31 now that we've deleted advice note 26 in the previous amendment. Proactive consideration should be given to the preparation of concept plans 6 within precinct D of the Belmont Racecourse redevelopment area. Concept plans for lot 6 should include the provision of shared visitor parking open to the visitors of surrounding lots to service visitor parking demands in the area.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that as an amending motion? There's not a seconder, I'm afraid, Councillor Minson. So, oh, sorry, did I not see your? Didn't see your hand there. Thank you, Councillor. We've got a seconder for that. So, would you like to speak to it?
So I guess there just as an advice note to just clearly have it documented. I think a lot of the informed discussions that have happened and reporting around this issue, I think it's an important thing that needs to happen for the future. I understand that it's in the detailed area plan, I believe, for the site, but I think having it clearly documented as part of this approval, I think kind of gives weight to the fact that we are not meeting our visitor parking requirements for this lot, so that it's clearly noted that there is a plan associated with this development approval to address that issue going forward. It's an advice note, it's not binding, it's completely in line with what the applicant is proposing. So I hope you.
All right, thank you. As seconder, Councillor Rosa, did you wish to speak to that amending motion?
No.
Okay. Let's put it to the vote then. Those in favour of that amending motion?
Madam Chair, could I just talk to it?
You may certainly.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to clarify, I understand exactly why Councillor Minson is moving it and his rationale. I'm just a little concerned about, even as an advice note, putting something on an approval for on a form 2 approval for a specific development that relates to lots, even though they're linked through the larger planning framework, asking the applicant to do other things. So although I support the sentiment, I'm comfortable that the broader planning framework will pick that up, and I'm just not comfortable with putting that as an advice note on this approval relating to a different lot. So
anybody else wish to speak in that regard?
Yes, I too am not comfortable putting the advice note on. I don't think I'll die at the rampart, but on that. But yeah, the local development plan already covers for that. But as an advice note, it's not binding. But I'll just say that at this stage, I wouldn't be supporting it.
Ethical speaking, equally, I share the view that we're probably don't need to do that as an advice note either, but let's put this to the vote. Those in favour?
If I just close,
So you can close, yes, certainly.
just to respond to, I guess, the philosophical or planning kind of framework that, you shouldn't be putting conditions, or I guess this advice note relating to lots outside this development. But, we talk a lot through, the RAR, a lot of the justification around conditions and, leniencies in the framework and changes are justified by the fact that, we'll have a grocer in this development over in precinct D, or we'll have retail over here, because, it is a large development and we do have that unique ability for the whole peninsula to be developed by one developer, I don't think that it really stands, you kind of end up with foot in both camps if you aren't willing to have at least advice notes relating to this development that also refer to the rest, because the whole thing's kind of structured in the way that refers to the whole of Belmont Park. So just make that comment. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. We'll put this to the vote now. Those in favour of amending motion 2 for a new advice note? Okay, so that's carried, I think it's carried 3-2. Those against? That's carried 3-2 for the councillors Minson, Rosa and Mr Colthouse. Thank you. Any other amending motions, or if you'd like to speak to the substantive?
Just another amendment, please.
Yes.
Just amendment to condition 28, that the condition be reworded to begin as follows: the development to achieve a minimum 5-star Green Star rating equivalent. The reason being,
well, I'll get a seconder for you. Is there a seconder, please, for that amending motion?
Can Councillor Minson just read it out again? I couldn't hear it properly.
Certainly, thank you.
that the condition be reworded. This is condition 28 to begin as follows: the development to achieve a minimum 5-star Green Star rating or equivalent.
Is there a seconder for that as an amending motion? Councillor Melrose is seconding. Thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Just to state the reasoning behind it. So we briefly talked about it through the questioning, that if we are committing to following the NCC, the 2022 standards, that we are mostly meeting this 5-star requirement. So we just kind of get that assurance, I guess, that we will be there, that we've used that justification in here as good development sustainability practices. So to have that condition, I think, just assures the panel that we'll get that outcome. And I guess I'd refer to the State Administrative Tribunal decisions around the principles for extending development approvals, and one of the ones being that whether the development would likely receive approval now. And I think we have good, I guess, precedents. I know a lot of planners don't like that word, but that we've recently done an approval of a tower, very similar height, very, similar design, in this exact in this structure plan area, just the precinct across, which had the condition for a 5-star Green Star rating. So really that kind of indicates that that's the contemporary standard that we should be applying now to fulfil that SAT requirement.
Thank you. Councillor Melrose, do you wish to speak to this amending motion as seconder? No, thank you. Anybody else like to speak for or against this amending motion? Okay, let's put this to the vote, please. Those in favour? That's councillors Minson and Melrose. Those against? That's Mr Colthouse, Ms Page and Ms Hyde. That motion is lost, I'm afraid. Would you like to make any other amending motions or continue to speak to the substantive?
Yeah, happy to speak to the substantive. Just happy to support the approval for extension with the additional conditions. I'd just like to kind of commend the applicants for continuing to work so collaboratively with the town and the other state departments. I think it's kind of gold standard. I think what you guys are doing in terms of being open and back and forth and willing to make changes. As this this whole development is going to continue for decades, really. So it's surely the only way that we can continue to move forward with it. And just to comment on the development, I don't have, I think, issues with some of the issues coming up in terms of the design. I think it's, great design. It's, looks good to me. Nice. I'm not an architect, but looks nice. And I just would like to raise some concerns that I still hold as we move through, I guess, the process of further developments in this area. That, like I said, the lack of infrastructure being delivered alongside the development of Belmont Park. I think particularly the lack of a primary school is of concern. That being related, that all the planning being done for a maximum dwelling yield of 4,500 under the structure plan for this area. I'm concerned that we kind of exceed that, where again we're putting kind of further demand on social infrastructure and services in the area and in the neighbouring area. And the other concern, I guess, I still hold is the staging for the larger development that we talked about. To me, I don't feel like we have that kind of control over the full development for Belmont Park in a way that we can kind of assure the residents moving in as part of the early developments, such as this one, that they will have all those amenities and services, in the short and medium term while they're living there, and also obviously being surrounded by construction works for a long period of time. So happy to support the approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I will speak to the substantive and also propose a small amending motion. I'm comfortable to extend the approval timeframe and do believe that it meets the test required, equally for a Form 2. The proposal, I believe, is still appropriate in the context of the planning framework, and the surrounding land uses are still consistent, I believe, with the generality of the previous approval and the overall planning for the area. There were no substantial objections from referral agencies or the community, and it still received the design review panel support. I think as well, in terms of the residential mix, my reading of the research that the state's been doing is that there is increasing demand for small households and for family accommodation. And there's a bigger gap in the market for that versus the single bedrooms. So I think those changes that have been made actually respond to market demand and lifestyle needs appropriately. And I think the development does still respond very well to the principles of transit-oriented development. So with that, I'm happy to support it, but I would like to suggest an amending motion to move condition 41, which would be amending motion 4, I believe, condition 41 to an advice note. Things being numbered, so I'm not sure what number advice note it would be. And that would, do I have a seconder for that? Please, thank you, Ms. Page. Just very briefly, I'll speak to it. I think that it does, as Mr. Cruikshank acknowledged, require an other process beyond this development approval, and it would therefore be best placed as an advice note, something that the applicant would need to do beyond our current planning framework. So, Ms. Page, did you wish to speak to the amending motion? Anybody else wish to speak for or against the amending motion? Can we vote on that amending motion, please? Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. I have nothing further to say about the substantive as amended. Mr. Colthurst, did you wish to close debate for us on this part?
Just to the extent that I think the application's been thoroughly assessed. There's been a lot of discussion on aspects of it from all members of the panel, and I think that the fact that panel members generally support the application, maybe a few issues or some minor parts of it, some members are not supporting, but overall I think it's generally accepted that it's a good development, and therefore just supporting it.
Thank you very much. So let's vote on the substantive as amended. Those in favour? It's a unanimous decision for this part of the agenda. We also have a part B to this item, which is an approval under the WAPC. We have Mr. Rees-Wu and Ms. Delia Negley in the room, who are here to speak to the RAR and answer any questions. Is there any comment that you wish to make?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, we're just happy to answer any questions. I believe our RAR is clear as to what our role is, and it's happy to answer.
Thank you very much. I might refer online. Panel member Councillor Melrosa, did you have questions of the WAPC officers? No, thank you. Panel member Councillor Minson, did you have questions of the WAPC? Okay. Mr. Coltas?
Just in terms of the date of approval, it's extended to four-year period. Just the dates from the date of approval will be today. There's a difference. Leave it at that. They can
Happy with that.
Yeah.
I'll just ask a question with regarding the new condition. Obviously, we've got conditions under the town. And I think the previous condition 19, which I think is still in place, talks to the commission as well as the town. So we now have a new condition 14, which relates to the town and then the satisfaction of the WAPC. How do you see the interplay of those previous conditions with this one?
They would work hand in hand. The condition indicates that this is a matter of regional import, not only local import. Yes, it's to the specifications of the town, but because our RAR focus and the regional focus has been on the protection and of the river amenity, stormwater is clearly a very important part of that. And the Form 1 required a stormwater management plan from the WAPC perspective, as did the town's RAR. The town's Form 1 approval also included specific drainage design. Given the slight differences in design of how the water is going to be collected into the filtration basin, and I think one of the panel members mentioned that the Form 2 does give an opportunity to fine tune and a few things. It seemed relevant to us to support the town's conditions on this very important matter, given the closeness and relationship with the river environment. So, as the applicant mentioned, we have a very collaborative relationship in clearing the conditions in all aspects of this very large project. And it's not uncommon to have mirroring conditions. It doesn't necessarily result in more work from the applicant's point of view. It's very possible that they'll actually present the same info, but it just gives the WAPC an opportunity to have an oversight in addition to the town.
Right. Okay, that provides me with some clarity. Thank you. Any other questions of the WAPC officers?
Sorry, I will go back to the date of approval, if I may.
Please.
The approval from the council, we've just approved it to the 11th of October 2028. There'll be a 2-year gap on that, a 2-month gap between the commission and council approval extension. So do you object being extended to 11 October 2028, or do you have to go from the date of approval?
Not at all. I mean, we generally recommend for RA's date of approval because it takes the guesswork out of it. But I believe it's relevant for the two approvals to be consistent. So I have no objections whatsoever.
Probably should have.
In any change to this to marry that one.
I don't know if we change, if we're in breach of the regulations on that in that regard. Planning regulations require a minimum. No, it doesn't require a minimum.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, I'll address that shortly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of the officers from the commission? No. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we now turn to part B, which is under the Metropolitan Region Scheme. I'll seek a mover, please, in the first instance for this acceptance form 2 and approval. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Mr. Coltas. Seconded. I'm happy to second. Thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, look, I think the response from the officers of the department have answered any queries that may have happened. So I'm supporting the recommendation. The only thing I'm doing is proposing an amendment to the period of the approval, and in order to align with the council's date, I'm moving that it's the decision constitute planning approval and is valid for a period of 4 years. Is valid.
Where are you?
Is extended to 11 October 2028. The decision constitute planning approval and is extended to 11 October 2028, and then from there on, if the subject development substantially commenced, etc. The reason for that is that
I'm happy to second that as part of the primary. Thank you.
The reason for that is these misaligned approval periods have a habit of coming back and biting you on the proverbial at the most inappropriate time, and it may require a separate approval if you miss out by a day or two. Changing plans or something, but I don't see it as being a problem because I don't think you're going to wait another 4 years to commence development substantially.
And we're happy to take that as inclusive in the substantive, aren't we? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Would anybody else like to speak to this part of the motion of the substantive? No? Okay. Was there anything further you wished to say?
No further comment.
All right. Let's vote. Those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. So that closes part B, and just to refer back to our brief agenda, we have no SAT reconsiderations under part B. There are some SAT considerations to note under part C, but nothing for the town of Victoria Park. And I declare the meeting closed at 10:48 and thank everybody for their attendance, presentation, questions, answers, etc. This morning. Thank you.
Thank you.